Hello, my name is Zera's Legion, and Keen Software House has asked me to show off some of the upcoming features in the new Contact update for Space Engineers. We'll be looking at 3 of these features, but first, let's answer the question, what is Prototech? Prototech is a set of unique endgame blocks that are coming for free in the Contact update. They need new Prototech components to be constructed, which we'll be looking at later, but these components cannot be obtained through normal means. There's 3 main ways to get Prototech blocks. You can liberate a whole Prototech block from a Factorum global encounter and merge it with your grid, find enough Prototech frames and other Prototech components in random encounters and then build the block manually, or find enough Prototech frames and make the other required Prototech components with the Prototech Assembler. The Prototech Assembler, which we'll be looking at in a minute, has the ability to craft all of the Prototech components aside from the Prototech frame. This means that you will still need to involve yourself with the new encounters in order to gain access to the Prototech blocks. Now we know what Prototech is and how to obtain it, let's take a closer look at the Prototech Assembler. The Prototech Assembler is designed specifically for manufacturing Prototech components and cannot construct any of the base components. This means it is not a replacement for the regular assembler, it's instead designed to work alongside it. The Prototech Assembler's primary function is to allow you to maintain and repair Prototech blocks, although as I said earlier, if you have the frames you can use it to make Prototech blocks from scratch, and like all the Prototech blocks, you can obtain it by finding the full block during an encounter, or by constructing the block with the Prototech components found on those encounters. Personally, due to all of this, I imagine that this block is the first Prototech block you want to get, as the Prototech Assembler allows you to better focus what components you want in order to construct new Prototech blocks and repair ones you already have. But it's not actually that simple. In order to understand why, we need to take a look at Prototech Components. There are 8 new Prototech components in this update, with 6 of them being buildable with the Prototech Assembler. The 2 components that cannot be crafted at the Prototech Assembler are Prototech frames and Prototech scrap. As mentioned previously, Prototech frames could not be constructed with an assembler, instead they can only be found as part of encounters. Prototech scrap can also only be found as part of encounters, however, you don't just find scrap in its component form, it can also be obtained by grinding down a Prototech block. If you look on the right, there are Prototech components that are highlighted in red, and if I grind down this block, instead of getting those components back, I instead get Prototech scrap. Very similar to how when you grind a battery down, you don't get the battery components back, you instead get scrap. This scrap is very important though, as it's used by the Prototech Assembler to build the other components. The remaining 6 Prototech components are the Prototech Capacitor, Prototech Circuitry, Prototech Cooling Unit, Prototech Machinery, Prototech Panel, and Prototech Propulsion Unit. Prototech panels are interestingly the only Prototech component that you get back when you grind down a block, and additionally, they are the only Prototech component that does not require Prototech scrap to build. Now, one thing I find interesting about the Prototech panel is it requires magnesium to build, and the only other component in the game that requires magnesium is the explosive component, and ammunition requires it as well, which makes this a really interesting change, as the Prototech blocks seem to need a lot of these panels to be built, which means we're going to need to mine a lot more magnesium than we used to. The rest of them are the standard affair. They all require a mix of platinum, gold, silver, cobalt and iron, and obviously the Prototech scrap I mentioned earlier. Here you can see them all laid out on a table, and I'm going to be honest, my favourite one is definitely the Prototech Capacitor, but they're all pretty cool in their own right. This is the Prototech Circuitry, this is the Prototech Cooling Unit, this is the Prototech Machinery, the Prototech Panel, and finally the Prototech Propulsion Unit. However, as I said at the beginning of the video, there is 3 features we'll be looking at, and so far we've only covered the Prototech Assembler and the Prototech Components. So let's take a look at number 3. This is the Prototech Refinery, and unlike the Prototech Assembler, it is a complete upgrade to the base game Refinery. Effectively, it operates like a refinery, but with extra modules on it. So this is the base refinery settings. You can see it's got refinery speed 130%, yield rate 100%, power efficiency 100%, and this is currently using 0 modules. However, if we take a look at the Prototech Refinery, you can see, by default, it has a refine speed of 550%, a yield rate of 200%, and the same power efficiency, although it does look to use twice as much power as the base refinery. If I put 4 speed modules on the back of this base refinery, that takes us up to a maximum refine speed of 530%, which is still 20% slower than the Prototech Refinery, and if I instead replace them for yield modules, this gives me a yield rate of 200%, which is the same as the Prototech Refinery. So essentially, the Prototech Refinery is equivalent to the base game Refinery with 4 speed modules and 4 yield modules, which, as you're probably aware, isn't something you can currently do in the game. But it doesn't stop there. The Prototech Refinery has a second secret. It has a small grid version. Now, the small grid Prototech Refinery only has a refined speed of 150% and a yield of 125%, but we do not currently have a refinery for small grid, which makes this amazing. And this isn't the only small grid addition coming in this update, but I'll save that for someone else to tell you about. The Contact update will be released next Monday, and Keen will be hosting a release livestream where they show off the new features and blocks and will probably answer some of the burning questions you have. There's a link in the description where you can watch the livestream and join in on the fun. And whilst you're there, you should definitely like this video and subscribe to this channel, as trust me, there's a lot more exciting stuff coming in this update and I can't wait to talk about it.